This is footage from January of 2020. It shows the part of Tamata Park that was deforested and replanted. I got a good look at the area in my previous video when I walked the Big Redwoods track. I was curious to see what it was like before, and I hope you find it interesting as well. I'll go back and forth between the two videos on this switchback. It won't be long before I take a different route from the previous video. We'll see how much is even recognizable. This was about 3 months further into the summer, and you can see the big difference between the more golden grass of January and the lush green of this rainy spring of 2021. Obviously, they've improved this trail. I'm guessing they used it to get small vehicles up here to help with the cutting and planting and such. It looks like it might stick fairly close to where the old trail was. Marc Daalder starts his article titled, "Documents Reveal Real Lack of Preparedness for Delta," as follows. Health briefings obtained by Newsroom show the government only began planning for a Delta outbreak in late July, just weeks before the virus escaped MIQ in August. Simply put, the New Zealand government was still relying on the same strategy that was used since the first lockdown when Delta, a very different COVID, hit Auckland. It was only just beginning to talk about a new plan for the Delta variant. No one who knows New Zealand has any trouble believing in a government failure in planning. Or for that matter, a failure to plan. That's the rotary redwood grove on the right. Toby Manhire begins his article titled, "The Week the World-Beating COVID Response Lost Its Way," as follows. Jacinda Ardern won countless plaudits for leading New Zealand through the pandemic with decisiveness, resolve, and exceptional, crisp communications. Last week, it left the building. A clear plan, with clear goals, clearly articulated to the public, that remained consistent through regular updates given to the public, were important parts of the success of New Zealand's COVID response. These are some of the things that the Labour government did really right, and one of the reasons people bought into the lockdown and other measures, and for the most part, played by the rules. The lack of clarity and consistency in New Zealand's Delta response has been the big problem. Of course, that's because the plan was, and maybe still is, still being made. This is the point on the Rungakoko Trail when I look up this hill and say no thanks. I came back to walk this part separately. That's what I was doing when I took this video. The Daalder article explains a lot, but it doesn't explain why the government gave up on elimination. Manhire mentions the Prime Minister referring to the elimination strategy in the past tense, at the same time as the Director of Health said that elimination remained the approach. That could betray a lot more than just inconsistent messaging. Manhire's article is dated October 11th, so it predates the Prime Minister's inconsistent messaging regarding Christmas travel for Aucklanders. That decision may well now be out of the hands of the government, since so many Aucklanders believe that holiday travel was promised. But unless we believe that a woman who got herself elected Prime Minister has no understanding of human psychology, we have to look at this somewhat differently. That is, that the Prime Minister made that decision, but doesn't want to own it. She wants us to believe that it is out of her hands, and in fact the decision was made by the actions of the public. I know we don't actually literally vote for the Prime Minister. I'd say the Labour Party won in a landslide because of her, but it was a group effort. If you prefer, the Labour government made the decision to abandon elimination, although obviously not unanimously. Just a little over a week ago, the Director General of Health and the COVID-19 Response Minister told the media, "We are still trying to eliminate the virus outside of Auckland." So although we now understand that the government's failure to plan for Delta explains a lot, I still see what I saw before. Anti-vaxxers, meth bikers, and COVID hookers, and the public at large, is being set up as scapegoat for scrapping any chance of eliminating COVID in New Zealand. And of course, as scapegoats for what comes next. About a week ago, just when I was noticing an uptick in the number of Reddit posts about anti-vaxxers in New Zealand, and wondering how many of those there actually are in the country, to justify all the hand-wringing, I saw a post that provoked lots of speculation on that very number. The poster actually says that he isn't afraid of anti-vaxxers anymore. At the time of posting, apparently, 88% of New Zealanders had taken at least the first shot. That left 12% unvaccinated, and of course that number continues to drop. Other posters are sure that the 12% actually includes a majority of people who haven't been vaccinated yet for other reasons, and that the number of actual hardcore anti-vaxxers is much lower. Consensus seemed to be around 3%. There was a lot of talk in the thread about the whole anti-vax thing being an American thing. There was no awareness at all that the obsessing over and hating on anti-vaxxers is also an American thing. One poster offered other numbers. The day of a Super Saturday vaccination event, 120,000 people got a shot. An anti-vaccine protest in Auckland drew 2,000 people. Does any of this mean that New Zealanders will stop obsessing over anti-vaxxers? People here love that sport as much as people anywhere. But Kiwis have found another place to redirect their anger. New Zealanders are angry with the government. Not because it abandoned elimination of COVID, but because the Prime Minister may be backtracking on her apparent promise that vaccinated Aucklanders could travel for Christmas. Honestly, it has even evolved into simply anger that they're locked down right now. People know that the government has really messed things up, and no longer believing in that government or its plans, they want their summer holiday. And they want their lives back. The contrast is stark. New Zealanders can really come together for a common cause, and they're well practiced at browbeating others into line. These are parts of the culture. Until a good month into the Delta outbreak, Kiwis were pretty well committed to working toward a common good. Now their motivations seem entirely selfish. To be fair, people worldwide seem to be encouraged to believe in the vaccine providing more protection than it actually has. And unfortunately, the government here has given them no goal to work toward other than the highest possible number of people vaccinated. And in this situation, the freedom for the Christmas holiday carrot is too much for most people to turn their backs on, now that it's been dangled. This is what it was like looking down at the big redwood grove less than a year ago. I can't think of a better way to spread COVID to every corner of New Zealand than to turn Aucklanders loose on the country, vaccinated or not. The Prime Minister recently removed all doubt and promised that Aucklanders will travel by Christmas. The COVID-19 response minister has said that the government was not committed to keeping the virus locked up in the city endlessly, so it would likely reach much of the country in the coming months. Well, yes, Minister. I'd say you're guaranteeing it. By January, at the latest. New Zealanders are repeating things like, COVID is now a disease of the unvaccinated. They know that's not true as much as the person who first said it. They're saying anything that justifies the result they want. My fully vaccinated dad is in the U.S. He tested positive for COVID early last week and went into the hospital Wednesday with double pneumonia. His kids were expecting to be on a conference call to decide whether to put him on a ventilator, which the doctor said he's unlikely to survive. His condition has improved somewhat, and now we're also wondering how much damage the lack of oxygen has done to his organs. To my surprise, I've spoken with Kiwis who want the normal lives Americans have today, by which they mean few or no restrictions. The U.S. went through a bloodbath to reach the lives some Kiwis think they want. New Zealand is rushing to this supposed normal from a few months of isolation at worst, not to minimize the people that some have lost, but our numbers here are low, and very few of us have had to experience that. I don't see us being happy that we were in such a hurry. They'll probably get their holiday, but it won't make the Labour government any more popular. Maybe they really don't understand basic human psychology. If New Zealand were to open after Christmas, some Aucklanders would still take the opportunity to travel out of Auckland, but it would be nothing like the numbers that will do so over the Christmas holiday. There's no need to heavily infect the entire country before 2022 even arrives. But making this one last sacrifice for the greater good is looking to be far too much to ask. Talk to you soon.